Hello everyone and welcome back to LewisNews. In today's video we're talking more Madam Web. We've got some updates as to the post-credit scene of the film. As you guys may know, I reported on the channel a few days ago, or even might have been a week ago now, that Madam Web apparently wouldn't actually have a post-credit scene, but we are actually getting more as to the reason why we're not getting a post-credit scene in this film. Now today's leak comes in from VScooper on Twitter. Now remember, once again, take leaks with a grain of salt because Madam Web may end up having a post-credit scene in the film. We know it's a superhero movie. Superhero movies nowadays are very primed to have post-credit scenes. It's very unusual for a big blockbuster like this to not have a post-credit scene, especially when it's a part of a connected universe or a connected multiverse, I guess you could say nowadays as well. So make sure to take this with a grain of salt. But we've got more of a reason as to why Madam Web won't actually have a post-credit scene. As I mentioned, I reported not too long ago that Madam Web wouldn't actually have a post-credit scene in the movie. But it turns out that it goes a lot deeper than Sony Pictures just not wanting to include a post-credit scene. VScooper actually said himself, and I quote, "A while ago I heard there were post-credit scenes in Madam Web related to Venom and Spider-Man. It seems is no longer the case, and they were deleted. The Spider-Man reference wasn't related to any cinematic Spider-Man, but the final cut of the film is still in progress." And then he also went on to say after that, retweeting his tweet from a few days ago, saying, "It's final, this is the cut, and it's finished." So there's a lot to unpack here. So it turns out that the original post-credit scene from the film was actually meant to be referencing Spider-Man, and it was meant to be related to Venom. Now that is really interesting because, as we do know, it has been confirmed that Madam Web will take place in its own cinematic universe, so it won't be a part of the larger Sonyverse, which includes the likes of Kraven the Hunter and of course the Venom movies, but it will be a part of its own universe. People then theorize, does this mean that it might be a part of the Amazing Spider-Man universe, because Andrew Garfield was also rumored to be a part of the film, but then it turns out Andrew Garfield was actually cut from the film, and then it turns out that they wanted Tom Holland to be the main Spider-Man of the film, but then because they couldn't work anything out with Marvel and the timeline was all skew-if, they just decided to put it in its own universe. Whether any of that is actually true or not, either way, Madam Web is now in its own universe and isn't actually connected to any larger universe, which means it isn't connected to Venom or any sort of Spider-Man movie. So it seems like the post-credit scene possibly was going to be relating to the multiverse. We know at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage, Venom was transported into the MCU. However, just before he was transported into the MCU, Venom himself was talking to Eddie Brock about the hive mind that all of the symbiotes across all the multiverse have with each other, which is how Venom in the Sonyverse has the knowledge of Spider-Man, even though he's never interacted with Spider-Man in his entire lifetime. This is assuming that Venoms of other universes, including Venom from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man universe, have all interacted with Spider-Man before, and therefore the Venom of the Sonyverse has obviously got prior knowledge to who Spider-Man is in some form or another. How that works and how complex or how deep that goes, we don't actually know at this point in time. However, we do know there are multiversal elements to the Venom character, especially the Sonyverse version of the character, which means that the post-credit scene, if it was to include Venom, probably would have linked to this plot point somehow or some way. And of course, along with mentioning Venom, the post-credit scene would also go on to reference Spider-Man as well. However, just as the report that we covered a few days ago on the channel as well suggested, that apparently all references to Spider-Man, including Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland's versions of the character, were eventually cut from Madam Web because they couldn't decide which Spider-Man or what universe they wanted it to connect to. We also found out that a bunch of reshoots that they did for the film was actually there to take out some of the Spider-Man references of the film as well. So it seems like all the reports that are coming out from various different sources are all lining up with the same sort of narrative. Sony can't really decide what they want to do with this film, and Sony can't decide which universe they want to connect it to, which I guess makes a lot of sense as to why they are looking to remove the post-credit scene. And as VScooper says as well, that is going to be the final cut of the film, and the final cut is actually finished with no post-credit scene. So is there still a chance that potentially there may be a post-credit scene in Madam Web? Of course there is, because as we do know, the Avengers movies, they actually were still shooting scenes and doing reshoots and doing edits to the film all the way up until the first public release of the film. They even did another scene. They even shot one more scene after the premiere of the film. So there is a version of the Avengers film out there somewhere that actually wasn't released to the public, but was actually different to to the one we got in final theaters. So we know that studios have the power to go back and do this. We also know that they've changed things in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as it has been released. We know that there are multiple versions of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in theaters. People saying and reporting that they've seen different versions of the movie from different locations depending on which cinema they go to, which quite frankly is a little bit unnecessary but quite cool if you ask me. So we know studios have the power to update movies as they are releasing. So if they do decide at some point within the next few weeks that they want to add a post-credit scene to the Madam Web movie, then they can do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because when we get closer and closer to the release of the film, the first reactions for the film when it comes to critics and some fans who get to see the movie early and studio execs, whatever, will start to give their reactions to the film, which V Scooper also says in the same tweet that this was presented a few days ago and the reactions were a bit underwhelming, which doesn't sound good. But the reason as to why this is relevant is because depending on the film's success could also very heavily impact what universe they are going to put Madam Web in. If the film ends up flopping dramatically, they'll just shove Madam Web aside and act like it never happened. However, if the film ends up being a massive success, there's more of a chance of characters from Madam Web showing up elsewhere, and also maybe the potential of a sequel to the film, or potentially it connecting to the MCU or something along those lines. But either way, as V Scooper says, the film apparently is a little bit underwhelming according to first reactions, so we'll just have to see for ourselves how good the film actually is. But either way, I want to know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about Madam Web? Are you excited for it? And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.